Breaking overnight, the girlfriend of the Las Vegas gunman greeted by the feds on the tarmac, once again considered a person of interest.
Police released brand new body cam footage showing their frantic search for the shooter.
We are getting a look into the hotel room itself, from which the gunman carried out the deadliest shooting in modern American history.
They raided the house or finished cleaning up the house in Reno, Nevada, and what did they find? They found another cache of weapons.
47 firearms have been recovered. These firearms were recovered from 3 different locations.
President Trump heading to Las Vegas today to meet with first responders and victims. The worst mass shooting in modern American history.
It was the wings of angels. There were so many people that weren't wearing a gun and a badge and a fire uniform that came from nowhere to help.
All right, everybody, we're going to continue to pursue this story predominantly, and this is a Fox News alert. The girlfriend of the Las Vegas shooter arriving back in the U.S. overnight in a wheelchair.
Mary Lou Danley returning from the Philippines, greeted by the feds moments after landing there at LAX in Los Angeles.
She is now considered a person of interest once again as the police and the FBI try to figure out what led the killer to commit the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history.
We also want to know what Danley knew as her family speaks out, her sisters, saying the gunman sent her away so he could unleash the massacre. And that's going to be key. What did she know? I mean, she is our last, perhaps best hope to find out more about this killer. What was his intention? What was the plotting and planning? And was it indeed him alone? Steve, you're out in Las Vegas now. What was it like during the day yesterday? And what is it like now?
Well, I tell you what, Brian, actually yesterday during the day, I went into the Mandalay Bay. I went in through one of the other casinos, and I was able to go down to the floor of the casino, and it was eerie. There was nobody there except me and the cops. So, a lot of people are still planning on being here for conventions and things like that, but at the same time, in fact, right here, this is all part of the largest crime scene in Las Vegas history. But what's interesting is all the signs around Las Vegas that usually say, the electronic signs that they program that say, "Welcome to Las Vegas," now they say, "Pray for the victims," hashtag Vegas Strong, things like that. So it will be interesting to see what the authorities, Brian and Ainsley, are able to get from the girlfriend of the shooter, because she wound up flying to the Philippines about 10 days ago. And law enforcement has not yet mentioned whose account exactly that $100,000 was wired into.
Yeah, that's right. They're saying that Stephen Paddock wired $100,000 to the Philippines last week. And Steve, we do know she got on a plane. She went to Hong Kong first and then flew over to the Philippines. That was last Monday. And it's just interesting how all this time frame is panning out. Her sisters live in Australia. She has a citizenship in Australia, but police are saying that she hasn't lived there in 20 years. The sisters are saying they think that this guy, and his brother is saying, we think this guy was setting her up so that she could have some money and be set up for the future.
But the brother also added that for him and the amount of money that he had, $100,000 is not a lot of money considering he's dead and that's it. And by the way, the brother went on to say, he did Stephen Paddock, made Eric very wealthy. They went into real estate together, or at least he got some money for his real estate activities. Right. So the sisters of Mary Lou Danley spoke to 7 News in Australia. That's where she was born. Let's listen to what they said from what they know about the sister and the killer.
He sent her away so that he can plan what he's planning without interruptions. In that sense, I thank him for sparing my sister's life, but that won't be to compensate 59 people's life. No one can put the puzzles together, no one except Mary Lou, because Steve is not here to talk anymore. Only Mary Lou can maybe help.
Steve and Brian, when they said that he sent her away so that he could plan this massacre, it almost sounds like she knew, but then the sisters go on to say she's in shock. She loved this man, she lived with him, and she had no clue. And authorities are saying they do have her, they're questioning her, but they aren't going to charge her, at least at this point.
What's interesting about her story is they've been a number of reporters have done some digging into her past. And apparently, according to some sources, she was married to 2 guys at the same time. She's listed as having state residence several different states, also 2 different Social Security numbers. So there's something going on with this woman who, when they're able to sit her down and ask her all these questions, maybe she will be able to explain what was going on in the mind of the guy she lived with.
And Steve, remember those pictures that emerged yesterday of these two like to go on cruises together, but in 2012, 2013, there's pictures of both of them in the Philippines. So, and there's no proof that the tens of thousands, outside the 100,000, there's no proof that the tens of thousands went to her account. What account? Why would you send money to the Philippines, a place that you went to or stopped by on a cruise? So there's so many questions, and she is really the one to supply the answers. And the word is she's already talking, Ainsley.
I read an article this morning, Stephen Bryant, that a Starbucks guy who was inside the Virgin River Casino, it's the only Starbucks in that area, he said that Stephen Paddock would berate her in public. He said it happened a lot. And when she asked to use his casino card to buy something, the Starbucks guy said he would glare down at her with a mean attitude and say, "You don't need my casino card for this. I'm paying for your drink just like I'm paying for you." And she would softly say, "Okay," and step behind him.
Wow. That's maybe an indication of the relationship. Meanwhile, it's 6 minutes after the hour. Adam Housley's been working this story.
That's right. He's following the rest of this investigation out there in Las Vegas where Steve is, too. Adam, what's the latest on your end?
Yeah, adding a little bit to Steve's reporting on Mary Lou, I know this. She's not in custody, and so far I'm told by multiple sources very close to this investigation that she has been very helpful. And you got an idea of that from that interview from Australia. The sisters say they hope that she can help, and Mary Lou would be the person to do that best. Authorities believe the same thing. The idea is to get her here where Las Vegas has jurisdiction. Of course, they're the ones investigating this officially. FBI right now is just assisting, and then hopefully she'll be able to help unravel what happened here. So very interesting in regards to that. The other big deal yesterday, besides the fact that we learned she was coming to the U.S., was the body cam video that was brought out by the Sheriff's Department in that press conference yesterday, early evening here in Las Vegas. Unbelievably dramatic. I also had a chance to speak to one of the men who was on the one of the tactical teams. Now, there were a number of tactical teams that were deployed that night, wearing helmets, wearing armor. And I'm told, one of the guys said that it took them a little bit more time to get to the room because they wanted to clear 3 full floors to ensure nobody else in the hotel was injured. They also didn't know what they were dealing with. But listen to the dramatic sound coming from that tape that came from the camera on the officer's body. Listen.
Go that way, go that way, go that way. Hey, they're shooting right at us, guys. Everybody stay down. Stay down. Where's it at?
North of the Mandalay Bay. It's coming out of a window.
Get back! Get back! Get back! You can hear the chaos in the air just coming from those bullets. Now, we know a couple of things. With Mary Lou, they believe, again, at this hour, we're told that she didn't know this attack was going to happen, but because of their relationship, she may know some other instances of him having these weapons, maybe where he got them from or who he was talking to. That's what's at least going to go forward from here. Guys, also one more thing to give it back to you. I asked one of the sources here, I said, why do you think he stopped shooting when he did? There was more weaponry inside. There was tons of rounds still in that room. Why did he stop and kill himself when he did? I'm told this. In that room, the percussion level was so loud because those guns are so loud, and they had smoke in there, of course, as well, and it's hot in there, and he may have at some point thought, oh my God, they're coming for me, and he wanted to ensure that he was the one to take his own life. That's what they think happened, and of course that happened minutes, significant number of minutes actually, before the team blew open that door and got into that room. Back to you guys in New York.
Thanks, Adam. And two, it shows you how much worse it actually could have been. You have 23 guns there, 40 plus in his 3 different locations.
47.
Yeah, as well as other firearms. And how many? 23 cases of ammo. This could have been a lot worse. And that was just in 9 minutes in which the shooting took place.
Mm-hmm. Steve, the motive, you know, everyone's been asking, who is this guy? Who is she? And what is his motive? What caused him to do this? And I read one report that on July 28th, 1960, he was 7 years old, and a neighbor took him swimming because that neighbor knew that authorities were coming for his dad, who was on the FBI's most wanted list for robbing banks. Family was never the same, this neighbor said. The mom struggled with 4 sons, raising 4 sons, and the dad escaped from prison 2 times. And they said that this child, Stephen, at the time was 7, and he was the oldest son. So I wonder if he witnessed this, and maybe that affected his life.
Yeah, maybe the girlfriend can, fill in some of those blanks. Also, as it turns out, the shooter for a while worked for the IRS, and he worked for the post office in addition to being in the insurance business and doing a lot of real estate speculation.
Right.
Meanwhile, the President of the United States is expected to arrive here in Las Vegas later today. It is expected he will meet with some of the survivors. He's also going to meet with the families of the victims, and he's going to be thanking law enforcement for the unbelievably heroic acts. One thing, Brian and Ainsley, though, that he is expected to steer clear of, and that is the topic of gun control, which a lot of people on cable TV and elsewhere are saying this is the time to talk about it. Here in Las Vegas, people say now is not the time. Now is the time to grieve.
Yeah, I think he just wants to meet with the families. The families don't want to talk about that probably right now.
Right.
Give it a week at least.
And I think probably the most traumatic and where he's needed most perhaps is a hospital. We know that 59 have lost their lives, including the shooter, and over 500 are, in some cases, struggling for their lives or recovering after the shooting. Some will never be the same. We do understand that the number of 527 might be high because some people have been double counted. Only 3 people have not been identified. But if the president, who's one of his great skills is his interpersonal skills, I think where he's needed most maybe is that hospital with the families in the waiting room. And also, one thing to bring up, there are a series of pictures that have been verified by the Sheriff Lombardo last night, that show what happened, what it looked like in that room. And on one of the tables is a note and a pen. So I'm very curious to see if that note was a list of things to do or why I am doing this. So there might be clues. As forthright and as great as law enforcement has been, they obviously have to hold a lot back. I'm wondering if that's what they're holding back.
Yeah, and one of the other things the police did talk about yesterday was because the photograph of the gunman dead on the floor was leaked to the press, an investigation has been launched to figure out who exactly would have done that. Nonetheless, on the internet, the picture's out there, and the chief yesterday said, yep, that's the shooter.
Meanwhile, Jason Aldean has canceled his shows. He was on stage when the shooting happened, October 6th in Los Angeles, October 7th in San Diego, and October 8th in Anaheim. He's refunding the money for all those ticket holders, obvious reasons.
All right, thanks, Steve. Stand by. We're going to go to commercial break, but we'll check back in with you.
Meanwhile, straight ahead, President Trump goes one-on-one with Geraldo Rivera in Puerto Rico. You'll see the entire interview.
To what extent do you commit to help rebuild this battered place?
The answer when Geraldo returns.
And the American Medical Association ramping up its push for stricter gun laws, calling gun violence a public health crisis. But does it really qualify? Let us know.
This epidemic of gun violence is a uniquely American problem.
Enough debates, enough mere platitudes about thoughts and prayers for the victims.
They can take those euphemisms and stuff them.
Democrats wasting no time pushing gun control after the Las Vegas shooting, and joining them now, the American Medical Association, tweeting this: gun violence is a public health crisis, evident by the senseless loss of life and injury in Las Vegas. Thank you, brave first responders. But what do you think? Does gun violence really qualify as a public health crisis? Well, here to discuss this is Dr. Nicole Saphier. Hey, Dr. Saphier, thanks for being here. What do you think?
Well, I want to reiterate what they said. Thank you to our first responders, all of the healthcare personnel who have helped everyone. That is an amazing job. Calling something a public health crisis, it's really a matter of perspective. But with that would come increased funding for research and potentially a lot more mandates when you call something a crisis. Usually when you talk about a public health crisis, that means more like natural disasters, our hurricanes, our earthquakes, and other infectious diseases that we're seeing. And so that's really what I think is more appropriately called a public health crisis, not necessarily gun violence, although we do have a gun violence problem here. But is it really a public health crisis? I'm not sure about.
Why wouldn't they call it a security crisis?
In my opinion, it's not a public health crisis. It is a national security issue. Now, I will say, though, the majority of our gun violence deaths are due to suicide. So maybe we have a largely untreated mental health crisis. That is true, but that isn't necessarily synonymous with just gun violence. Like, we do have mental health issues. And in a world right now where we have record-breaking numbers of STDs, we have measles coming back, we have a lot of public health concerns, that is where I think our attention needs to be. Our public health funds needs to be attentive towards that.
So you think the Democrats are doing this and the Medical Association are doing this just for funding to get more money?
Well, I'm not gonna say why they're doing it, but I do think when you call something using that rhetoric a crisis, your next step is going to be requesting funding for it, for research, how to prevent it. But we need to focus on securing our borders, securing our Americans, and making sure everyone is safe.
Okay, what are legitimate health issues that you think need the most funding? You mentioned a few.
Well, right now what we're seeing from the hurricanes, we need to make sure that, I mean, those are huge public health issues right now. You have diseases, you have a lot of infections, that those really require our help right now, our funding. The people in Las Vegas, we have a lot of healthcare personnel who need to be helping there.
Not to mention breast cancer and heart disease and diabetes that affect so many people in our country.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Sapphire. President Trump goes one-on-one with Geraldo Rivera down in Puerto Rico. Geraldo joins us live with that next. And saluting the fallen, Las Vegas police honor one of their own, that guy right there, who died as a hero in Sunday's attack.
We are back, and back to the latest on the Las Vegas massacres. We're getting more and more information by the moment. But first, some other stories making headlines, and let's begin with a Fox News alert here. Brand new video showing the Chelsea bombing suspect wheeling suitcases through New York City moments before a pressure cooker exploded. That happened last year, believe it or not. It was just a year ago. This sending people running for their lives. The video's revealed at the trial of Ahmed Rahimi, accused of hurting 30 people in the blast, and very defiant, by the way, in court. Also breaking right now, 15 Cuban diplomats kicked out of Washington, D.C. About time. The State Department order comes after a series of mysterious attacks. There are sonic attacks. Sickened at least 22 Americans. A lot of mystery there. Some with hearing problems or brain damage. Cuba has denied any responsibility. In our first glance at what could become President Trump's big, beautiful border wall, a 30-foot slab of concrete going up right near the southern border, happening in San Diego. The Trump administration will choose from 8 different prototypes, and we'll see. The people in San Diego will tell you that when they're fencing one up, it improved everything dramatically, let alone this wall, Ainsley.
I'm going to be curious to see if that plan going forward works with putting advertisers by.
Like a minor league baseball team?
All right. Well, we have a Fox News alert this morning. There is still that crisis down in Puerto Rico worsening. It actually got worse overnight as the death toll rose to 34 after Hurricane Maria. The devastation is just widespread, as you could see.
So President Trump got to see it firsthand on a visit to that storm-ravaged island there, and he had a series of meetings. He toured the damage himself with Melania and met with those recovering.
Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera, was on the ground in Puerto Rico for more than a week now and got the interview with the president exclusive, and he joins us now. Hey, Geraldo.
Hi, Ainsley. Hi, Brian. It was very important, given the extent of the damage. This is really, I believe, and this has to sink in with people, the worst natural disaster in modern history in terms of the number of people personally affected. 3.4 million people. 5% of them have electricity. 50% of them have flowing water. 1/3 of them have cell service. The rest are out of touch. Their supplies are meager. They needed very much to be reassured by the president and the first lady. I was delighted that with so much going on and so many catastrophes competing for his attention on center stage, that the first family could make the trip to Puerto Rico. Here's the president of the United States.
Many people feared that because of the awful tragedy in Vegas, you would be diverted. You came anyway, why?
Well, they're special people, and as you know, I know many people from Puerto Rico. I come from a place called New York, and I love the Puerto Rican people. I also know the island very well. I've been here many times, and we have to help. And we've done a fantastic job. This was a very tough one. You know, I say we got an A+ in Texas, we got an A+ in Florida, and we may have done our best work here, but it hasn't been appreciated. But actually, if you see over the last couple of days, now people are really seeing what we've done. The runways are open, the ships are pouring in, and a lot of things are happening, so it's great.
On that note of not being appreciated, I noticed the mayor of San Juan, Mayor Yulín, in the crowd. She's the probable Democratic candidate for governor in 2020. She did not applaud. Welcome to the bitter partisan politics of Puerto Rico. How do you feel? You've been blamed for everything from kids dying to a cholera epidemic that didn't exist.
Well, I don't know the mayor, but she was very, very nice at the very beginning. She said it's incredible what happened, and then all of a sudden I noticed she went a little bit on the nasty side, and I said, I guess she's running for office, and it turns out I was right. See, isn't that a shock? But I will say your current governor, he's been amazing. Your congresswoman has been absolutely amazing, and the people, I met your state senators and lots of other people, and they've been so thankful, and I think virtually every mayor has been so thankful. I've met many of them this morning, the job we've done, and it's the job of the Navy and the Army and the Air Force, the Marines, the whole thing. I mean, it's incredible.
Will we see a Trump plan to rebuild this poor island?
Well, we're going to help the people. You know, look, this had a lot of problems and a lot of debt. They had $72 billion in debt before the hurricanes hit, and they had a power plant that didn't work before the hurricane. So we're going to help them. We're going to do something, and we're going to get it back on its feet.
To what extent do you commit to help rebuild this battered place?
Well, we're going to work something out. We have to look at their whole debt structure. You know, they owe a lot of money to your friends on Wall Street, and we're going to have to wipe that out. That's going to have to be, you know, you can say goodbye to that. I don't know if it's Goldman Sachs, but whoever it is, you can wave goodbye to that. We have to do something about, because the debt was massive on the island. And
my Aunt Ellie doesn't care about that. She wants some help, and so she wants to hear from you.
We are going to help the people out. We're going to get the electric going again. You know, that was a complete wipeout. That wasn't like a couple of poles came down. That was generating plants. That was a lot of very valuable equipment. But it was equipment in bad shape, but we're going to put it in good shape.
The president and the first lady were enthusiastically received by 99% of the people. They went around to various neighborhoods to comfort people. Here, this is the Calvary Church. They went where food was being distributed. I mean, you can hear how the folks there, the regular folks, responded to him. This is not politics. This is real enthusiasm from real people. But there are problems still with the relief effort. I spoke to the man in charge, General Jeffrey Buchanan. Here's General Buchanan.
Tough logistical situation. You think you have a handle on it?
It is tough. We're getting better every day, but we really have to bring fuel here. We're working hard to get fuel. Without fuel, people can't go to work, and we need them to get back to work so that we can help the people help themselves.
What's the logjam on the fuel?
Initially it was ports. You know, all the seaports were closed, the airports were closed. Now we've got them open, so it's starting to flow. It's just a matter of getting there. In the center of the island, we still got some roads down, so we're trying to clear those roads so we can get gas all the way up into the mountains.
Do you think you should have been appointed the incident commander a couple of days sooner?
You know, the Navy had the lead here from the get-go. They've been here. I've had teams here since the 4th of September. It's just this storm hit and had such a devastating effect. My boss, General Robinson, made the decision we need to shift to a land-based effort. So that's why I'm here.
Do you think the worst is over?
You know, we've got a long ways to go. We really do. It's going to be a long haul till we take care of these people the way they deserve.
You're a war fighter. How does it feel fighting a hurricane?
Well, I've been helping people a lot all around the world, but it's wonderful to help Americans.
General Buchanan tells it like it is, a tough, long slog, but it is getting done, right. And the people of Puerto Rico are grateful.
Geraldo, unbelievable interview. Great follow-up with the second most important person on the island. Of course, we're trying to get to the bottom of it. Some people have doubts that the politicians will get the money that we give to the people that need it most. That's why I hope our military can stay directly involved. Geraldo, thanks so much.
That's why it's nice for our politicians to actually go and see in person what the need is. Thank you so much, Geraldo. All right, coming up, strong words from Mr. Las Vegas after the tragedy in his city.
The one thing that still angers me is that nobody can give a reason why this fruitcake did that.
It's the thoughts of many people. Jillian Mealy goes one-on-one with Wayne Newton, why he says the show must go on, and that's live next.
And have you seen this picture? A man diving on top of a woman as the bullets fly around them. That was the cover of the New York Post yesterday. Now we know what happened to them, and it's a miracle. The story behind that photo next.
We're back with a Fox News alert. The Las Vegas shooter's girlfriend arriving back here in the United States overnight.
Yeah, believe it or not, she arrived in a wheelchair. Mary Lou Danley, returning from the Philippines, greeted by the feds moments after landing in Los Angeles. But she is not under arrest. In fact, she is now considered a, quote, person of interest as police and the FBI try to figure out what inspired the killer.
We are also learning more about the 59 innocent people that were killed in the attack. I should say 58, because he's the 59th. And the heroes who helped complete Strangers Survive, the deadliest mass shooting in American history.
Now, Steve is out in Las Vegas covering the story, working it at night and during the day. Steve, person of interest, that's how they described the Boston bomber's wife for a while, and it took them a while to arrest her. Where do you think they're going with this?
Right. Well, keep in mind, initially they said she was a person of interest, and then they realized she was out of the country, and they said she's no longer a person of interest. Then, after it was discovered that apparently they had wired, he, the shooter from the 32nd floor, had wired into somebody's account, and we don't know whose account, $100,000 in the Philippines, and she was in the Philippines. Suddenly there were so many dots they needed to connect. They have now called her a person of interest. She was greeted at LAX by the FBI, and so she is speaking to them. Meanwhile, regarding law enforcement, they lost one of their own, and there was an emotional and heartfelt ceremony yesterday for an off-duty Las Vegas, Nevada police officer by the name of Charleston Hartfield. 34-year-old guy, there he is right there. He was also known as Charles and Chucky. He coached youth football. He wrote a book called Memoirs of a Public Servant, and one of his relatives said he gave up his life for this country. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time and got caught in the crossfire as that guy was shooting down. And so many people here in Las Vegas are remembering him on this Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I hope, Steve, people go out and buy his book, Memoirs of a Public Servant. He was a young man, and his friends say he seriously was one of the nicest guys ever, the most true blue American guy I've ever met.
Yeah, it turns out he sadly has two young children. In fact, one of his friends, Troy Rett, told the Las Vegas Review-Journal that he texted his buddy Hartfield hoping that he was okay. He never got the text back, and now we know why. And you talk about an off-duty officer, you don't even know what he's doing. Sometimes they just want to go to a concert, but you're never really off-duty if you're a cop. Yeah. And I've seen it so many times, absolutely. Meanwhile, we'll talk about that, and of course there's some scenes, too, of his body rolling down the street and him being saluted by other officers. Steve, one of your friends was with Jillian last night.
That's right. We are in Las Vegas, and Mr. Las Vegas has been very vocal with Jillian about what happened.
You know, he's one of those guys, he defines Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
He's been here for so long. Everybody knows him as Mr. Las Vegas, and he was really, really taken aback by this tragedy. You could tell when he was speaking to us on camera yesterday, and he actually had some really harsh words for the gunman. Take a listen.
My first reactions were anger, obviously. As the investigations go on, we find out more and more, but the one thing that still angers me is that nobody can give a reason why this fruitcake did that. Your first reaction, again, is, will that define Las Vegas from this point on? And having thought it through, I don't believe it will. I know Las Vegas will recover from it. It's a terrible, terrible thing, and our sympathies and prayers go out to all the victims and those that are still fighting for their life. But we have survived other things in this town, and what happened Sunday night obviously could not have been nobody could even assume something like that would ever happen. For that lone fruitcake to define what Las Vegas is, I don't think will happen. I think that by committing suicide, he might have, in his own mind, escaped earth justice and the justice of the people, but I know that there's a seat waiting for him in hell. So he'll suffer a long time. I think people will understand that they can still come here, have the kind of fun that they look forward to when they come to Las Vegas. And we as performers, if God has given us any talent at all, now is when it should be used to help the town, our community, and those that have been injured to heal.
Steve, he had a show last night, and he said he didn't really want media there. He had requests for interviews at the show. He said he didn't want that. He didn't want it to be about that. He wanted it to be a place people could go and heal. People could go and just get away for a second. And also, he made a donation, he and his wife did yesterday, of $100,000 to the victims.
So, Mr. Las Vegas, the show must go on.
And it did last night.
And you know, Ainsley and Brian, one of the things that I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this as well, is that so many people are still here in Las Vegas, and they're at the casinos, and they're out trying to have a good time. And I was actually back at the Mandalay Bay. I went in yesterday, and it was as you would expect. But people are somber, but they feel like, I'm in Las Vegas, I got to try to make the best of it.
And that's what he said. I have to do that for them.
Right.
You know,
the
think
show
about,
must go on.
Jillian, great job. You know, Steve and Jillian, Brian, think about the impact this is having, not only the financial impact, but for years to come, for the rest of these families' lives, things will never be the same. This one guy did all of this to so many families and to Las Vegas. That casino's empty now. People had to change their trips, change their plans.
Right.
Well, I'll add to that, too. They're already changing security procedures, too. Multiple reports of people going through bags of people as they enter some of the larger hotels. After all, this guy, they said, had 23 bags of ammunition moving up and down without anybody saying anything over the course of 3 days.
Right. That's right. Over at the Wynn Hotel, Steve Wynn's property, they did start yesterday doing some bag checks. They had some handheld metal detector wands. You know, it apparently slowed down people about 10 minutes from getting in, but at the same time, the people who were slowed down, they're thinking, oh, good. They're checking.
They're going to be on high alert for a long time.
Yeah.
All right, Jillian, Steve, stay right there. We're going to take a short time out, 18 minutes before the top of the hour. This next. Democrats ramping up an all-out assault on the Second Amendment.
I think there is an unintentional endorsement that gets sent to these mass murderers when after slaughter, Congress does nothing.
Really? Our next guest says that kind of talk drowns out the real story. And the real story is the amount of heroes that emerged.
And a nation is looking for answers after this tragedy. A Las Vegas pastor joins us live with the message of faith and hope that he is spreading to his devastated city.
"58 people killed, 59 including the shooter, and more than 500 injured in Las Vegas, many clinging to life. And Democrats wasted no time getting political and pushing gun control."
I know these are harsh words, but I believe it in my heart. I think there is an unintentional endorsement that gets sent to these mass murderers when after slaughter, Congress does nothing.
But should lawmakers really be politicizing the tragedy and implying that one party or the House of Representatives or Senate is responsible because they don't pass legislation that may or may not have helped? Our next guest found himself in ICU over a year ago and learned what's truly important. It's all in his brand new book, Before You Wake, Life Lessons from a Father to His Children, author and Fox News contributor Eric Erickson. Eric, this story now is your two areas of special interest. Politics is your profession, and life and death is what you've been forced to deal with you and your wife.
Right.
And sadly, both have crossed. First, on what Senator Murphy was saying. Is there an implied go sign to would-be killers because legislation's not passed?
No, I don't think there is at all. I think it's a dumb statement for him to make. The fact of the matter is the left immediately pivoted to politics, and we've drowned out the stories of all the American heroism that happened. There were terribly tragic stories of people standing up and being willing to take bullets so that others could get out alive. And the media pivoted quickly from those stories to statements like this, where nothing that Congress could have done short of amending the Constitution would have stopped this based on the facts we know now.
I mean, if you're going to play politics, and I'd rather not get into it, but I mean, how can you also not look at the 59 people on average killed a month in Chicago? If there was really some legitimate concern from late night talk show hosts, wouldn't they be leading with that every night?
You know, they should. Not only that, but a lot of these statistics that the senator and others are using, because mass shootings in this country are actually so rare and on the decline, they've had to rig the statistics to make it worse than it is.
Do you think that Republicans would ever get behind some type of legislation that limited this so-called bump fire stocks that would make a semi-automatic and automatic, which right now, believe it or not, we found out is legal?
You know, they may very well. The problem is that if Republicans compromise, Democrats more and more are showing they're not willing to compromise, so they'll just keep pushing and pushing. Where do you draw the line?
Well, let's talk about drawing the line with you. Your family got a left and a right. First your health concerns and then your wife's. Number one, what have you gone through as a family, and how has it changed you and propelled this book?
Last year, found myself dying in an ICU with blood clots in my lungs. Luckily survived. My wife, on the same day, was diagnosed with an incurable form of cancer. She's fine. We keep her on a medicine, but eventually her cancer will mutate. We'll have to deal with it. We had protesters show up at our house. My kids assaulted at the grocery store, yelled at by a stranger, thinking their father was destroying the country, and really made me focus on the fact there is much more to life than yelling about politics every day.
And you